The thick, earthy scent of old wood soaked through with decades of rain, the acrid smoke from the dying fire in the hearth, the underlying must of decay that clings to places long abandoned by warmth and life. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, a mournful sound that seemed to carry voices, warnings, the desperate cries of all the women who had come before me, who had been claimed, broken, reduced to nothing more than vessels for the pack's continuation. I sat there in the darkness, my back pressed against the rough-hewn logs, splinters digging into my spine through the thin fabric of my shirt. My fingers clutched my grandmother's pendant so tightly that the silver edges cut into my palm, drawing small crescents of blood that I didn't even notice. The pain was nothing compared to the terror that coiled in my gut like a living thing, writhing and twisting with every breath I took. Outside, the forest was alive with sound. The whisper of leaves in the wind became words I couldn't quite make out. The crack of branches under unseen feet became footsteps drawing closer, always closer. The distant howl of wolves, or were they Lycans, made my blood run cold and my heart hammer against my ribs so hard I thought it might burst through my chest entirely. The blood moon was rising. I could feel it in my bones, in the marrow-deep ache that spread through my limbs like poison. Every woman born to the pack knows that feeling, that pull, that undeniable call that says your body is no longer your own, that tonight you belong to whoever is strong enough to claim you, to mark you, to make you theirs in the most primal and terrifying way imaginable. And I was alone, completely, utterly alone in this forsaken cabin that smelled of death and abandonment, with nothing but my grandmother's pendant and the fading embers of a fire that couldn't keep away the cold that was seeping into my soul. Do you understand what it means to be property? Do you truly comprehend what it feels like to be raised, from the moment you can understand words, to believe that your worth is measured solely in your ability to bear children, to submit, to obey without question? My mother drilled it into me with the same repetitive certainty as she taught me to read, or to cook, or to mend clothes. You will be claimed, she would say, her voice flat and emotionless, as if she were discussing the weather or the price of grain. You will bear strong sons for the pack. This is your purpose. This is your honor. This is all you are meant for. She never asked me what I wanted. She never considered that I might have dreams beyond being some Lycan's breeding stock. And when I dared to question, when I dared to suggest that perhaps there was more to life than waiting to be chosen like cattle at market, her hand would crack across my face with such force that I'd taste blood, and she'd say through gritted teeth, "Ungrateful child. You dishonor your pack. You dishonor me." But my grandmother, my grandmother was different. She was ancient even when I was a child, her face a map of wrinkles that told stories of suffering and survival, her eyes clouded with cataracts, but somehow still seeing more than anyone else could. She would pull me aside when my mother wasn't looking, her gnarled fingers gripping my arm with surprising strength, and she would whisper things that made my mother furious, things about choice and power and a legacy that ran deeper than pack law. "You are not just pack blood, child," she would rasp, her breath smelling of herbs and secrets. "You carry something older, something the males fear more than they fear death itself. Your great-great-grandmother was a moon speaker, one who could command the very wolves themselves, who could bend the will of the pack with nothing more than her voice under the full moon. They tried to breed it out of our line, tried to dilute it with submission and silence, but blood remembers, Elena. Blood always remembers." I thought she was mad. I thought the years had finally caught up with her and stolen her reason along with her sight. But on her deathbed, when the pack healers had given up and left her to die in peace, she pressed this pendant into my hands, this small silver disc engraved with symbols I couldn't read, warm from her skin and pulsing with something that felt almost alive. "Run," she whispered, her voice barely audible over her labored breathing. "When the blood moon comes, run as far and as fast as you can. Hide yourself away from the claiming. They will come for you, Elena. They will smell the power in your blood, even if you cannot feel it yet. But if you survive the night unclaimed, if you can resist the pull until the moon sets, you might have a chance. You might be able to choose your own fate." And then she died, her last breath rattling out of her with a sound like wind through dead leaves, and I was left holding this pendant and a terror so profound that I couldn't sleep for weeks afterward. My mother was livid when she found the pendant around my neck. She tried to tear it off, tried to throw it into the fire, but something stopped her. Fear, perhaps, or some distant memory of what my grandmother had been before the pack broke her spirit. She settled for forbidding me to wear it, for threatening me with punishments I'd rather not recall, but I kept it hidden against my skin anyway, a secret rebellion that gave me the slightest measure of comfort. The years passed, and the blood moon ceremonies came and went. I watched girls my age get claimed, watched them submit to males who treated them like prizes won in battle, watched the light die in their eyes as they accepted their fate with the same resignation my mother had shown. And with each passing year, my terror grew because I knew my time was coming, knew that eventually I would be of age, and they would expect me to stand in that circle under the bleeding moon and wait for some Lycan to decide I was worth claiming. But I couldn't do it. God help me, I couldn't stand there and let it happen. My grandmother's words echoed in my head every time I tried to reconcile myself to my fate. Blood remembers, Elena. Blood always remembers. And something in me, some stubborn, furious part of my soul that refused to be broken, made the decision for me. I would run. I would hide. I would do exactly what my grandmother had told me to do, consequences be damned. So here I was, in this rotting cabin that I'd found weeks ago while foraging for herbs in the deep woods, so far from pack territory that no one should have been able to track me here. I'd stockpiled food and water, gathered firewood, and prepared myself as best I could for a night of solitude and terror. I told myself that if I could just survive until dawn, if I could just resist the pull of the blood moon for one night, then maybe, I could find a way to escape the pack entirely, to disappear into the human world where pack law held no sway. But as I sat there in the darkness, listening to the forest come alive with the hunting calls of Lycans on the prowl, I realized how foolish I'd been. How naive to think I could simply hide and be forgotten. How stupid to believe that the pack would let me slip away without consequence. The rain started just as the moon began to rise. Fat, heavy drops that hammered against the roof like accusations, each one saying, "You cannot escape. You cannot hide. You are pack, and pack law is absolute." The wind picked up, howling through the trees with a sound that was almost human, almost like screaming, and I pulled my knees to my chest and buried my face against them, trying to make myself as small as possible, as if I could simply disappear if I wished hard enough. The fire was dying. I should have fed it more wood, should have kept the light and warmth going, but I was paralyzed by fear, unable to move from my corner even as the cold crept in and my teeth began to chatter. The shadows grew longer, deeper, more menacing, and in them I could see shapes that might have been nothing or might have been everything I feared. And then I heard it, the sound that made my blood turn to ice in my veins. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps crunching through the undergrowth outside the cabin. Not the tentative steps of a deer or the skittering rush of a fox, but the measured tread of something large, something powerful, something that had no fear of what it might encounter in these woods. I stopped breathing. Every muscle in my body locked tight as I strained to hear over the pounding of my heart in my ears. The footsteps came closer, circling the cabin slowly, methodically, as if whatever was out there was taking its time, savoring the hunt. Then they stopped, right outside the door. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. It stretched out, infinite and suffocating, while I sat frozen in my corner, my grandmother's pendant clutched so tightly in my fist that I could feel it cutting deeper into my palm, warm blood trickling between my fingers. And then a voice, deep, resonant, carrying a weight of authority that made something inside me want to submit, even as every rational thought in my head screamed at me to stay silent, stay hidden, don't respond. "I know you're in there, Elena. My name." He knew my name. How did he know my name? Who was this, and how had he found me here, so far from pack territory, hidden away where no one should have been able to track me? "You can't hide from the blood moon," the voice continued, and there was something in it that wasn't quite human, a growling undertone that spoke of barely contained power. The call is too strong. Your scent is everywhere. Fear and defiance mixed with something older, something that sings to every Lycan within 100 miles. Did you really think you could run from this? I pressed harder against the wall, as if I could somehow melt into the wood and disappear. My breath came in short, sharp gasps that I couldn't control, and I knew he could hear me, knew that he was probably smiling at my terror. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, and there was an almost gentle quality to his voice now that was somehow more terrifying than if he'd been threatening me outright. "I'm not like the others. I don't believe in taking what isn't freely given. But we need to talk, Elena. We need to talk about what you are, what you're running from, and what's going to happen when the others find you, and they will find you. They're already on their way." Others. There were others coming. Of course there were. I'd been stupid to think I could hide from the entire pack, stupid to believe that one woman's defiance would go unnoticed or unpunished. "Go away," I managed to choke out, my voice cracking with fear and anger. "Leave me alone. I don't want to be claimed. I don't want any of this. Just let me go." A low laugh, not mocking but genuinely amused, echoed through the door. "Let you go? Child, you don't understand what you're asking for. You don't understand what you are or what's at stake here. That pendant you're wearing, your grandmother's gift. Do you even know what it is? What it means? How did he know about the pendant? How could he possibly know about something I'd kept hidden for years, something that even my mother had tried to forget existed?" "I can smell the silver," he explained, as if reading my thoughts. "I can smell the old magic woven into it, the kind of power that hasn't been seen in generations. Your grandmother was right to give it to you, right to tell you to run. But running isn't enough anymore, Elena. The time for hiding is over." The door shuddered as something heavy hit it, not a battering ram, just a single strike that made the entire structure groan and splinter. I screamed, scrambling away from my corner toward the back of the cabin, looking desperately for another exit, another way out, anything that might save me from whatever was on the other side of that rapidly failing door. "Stop," I cried out, my voice rising to a shriek that I barely recognized as my own. "Stop, please, just leave me alone." The impact stopped. The silence returned, even more oppressive than before. "I'm going to come in now," the voice said, calm and measured. "I'm going to come in and we're going to talk and you're going to listen to what I have to say. And then you're going to make a choice. A real choice, not the illusion of choice the pack has given you your entire life. Do you understand?" I didn't respond. I couldn't respond. My throat had closed up entirely, and all I could do was watch in helpless terror as the door began to open, slowly, deliberately, revealing first a sliver of crimson moonlight and then a shadow that seemed to fill the entire doorway. He stepped inside, and the cabin felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker, charged with a presence that made my skin prickle, and my wolf, the wolf I'd tried so hard to suppress, to ignore, to pretend didn't exist, stir restlessly inside me for the first time in years. He was massive. That was my first thought. Easily 7 feet tall, shoulders broad enough to fill the doorframe, muscles rippling beneath skin that seemed to shimmer in the dying firelight. His eyes, God, his eyes were the most unsettling thing about him. They glowed with an inner light, not the amber gold of normal Lycan eyes, but something deeper, darker, more ancient. They were the eyes of something that had seen centuries pass, that had watched empires rise and fall, that had no fear of anything this world could throw at it. And his scent, it hit me like a physical blow, flooding my senses with something that was equal parts terrifying and intoxicating. Pack males had a distinctive smell, musky and aggressive, designed to trigger submission in females. But this was different. This was primal in a way that went beyond pack dynamics, beyond the simple hierarchy of alpha and omega. This was the scent of old power, of magic that predated the modern packs, of something that existed outside the normal rules. "My name is Raven," he said, his voice filling the small space effortlessly. "I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of 17 packs spanning from the ice fields to the Great Mountains. And you, Elena Shadowborn, are about to become either my greatest ally or the catalyst for a war that will tear the entire Lycan world apart. Alpha King. The words echoed in my head, refusing to make sense. The Alpha King was a myth, a legend told to scare young Lycans into obedience. There hadn't been a true Alpha King in over a century. The packs were too fractured, too competitive, too suspicious of centralized power to ever submit to a single ruler. "You're lying," I whispered, though even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. This male carried himself with an authority that couldn't be faked, a certainty of power that only came from having it tested and proven time and time again. He smiled, and it was a predator's smile, all sharp teeth and dangerous promise. "I don't lie, Elena. I don't need to. The truth is terrifying enough without embellishment." He moved further into the cabin, and I scrambled backward until my spine hit the far wall, trapped with nowhere to run. He didn't pursue, didn't crowd me, just settled himself on the floor a few feet away, crossing his legs like we were having a casual conversation instead of a confrontation that might determine the rest of my life. "Let me explain something to you," he continued, his eyes never leaving mine. "The blood moon isn't just a night for claiming mates. It's a night when the barriers between our world and the old magic thin, when power flows more freely, when those with the right bloodline can touch forces that have been dormant for generations. Your grandmother understood this. She knew what you were, what you could become, and she tried to protect you from those who would use you or destroy you out of fear." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my hand had unconsciously moved to the pendant at my throat, and his eyes tracked the movement with knowing understanding. "Don't you?" he challenged. "Haven't you felt it, Elena? The way animals react to you. The way even the most dominant males in your pack seem uneasy around you. The dreams you have when the moon is full. Dreams of running through forests that existed before humans walked this earth. Dreams of commanding packs with nothing more than your will." I had. God help me, I'd had those dreams my entire life, and I'd always thought they were just fantasies, just my mind's way of escaping the suffocating reality of pack life. But the way he said it, with such certainty, such knowledge, made them feel suddenly real and terrifyingly significant. "You're a moon speaker," Raven said, and the words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. "The first one to emerge in over 50 years. Your bloodline carries the ability to command wolves, to bend pack law to your will, to speak with the voice of the moon itself. And tonight, when the blood moon reaches its zenith, that power is going to awaken whether you want it to or not." "No," I said, shaking my head violently. "No, that's not. I'm nobody. I'm just a packless female trying to avoid being claimed. I don't have any power. My grandmother was just a crazy old woman telling stories." "Your grandmother," Raven interrupted, his voice sharp enough to cut through my denial, "was Luna Shadowborn, the last recognized moon speaker of the Eastern Territories. She was forced into submission by her pack's alpha 60 years ago, bound and mated against her will to break her power and ensure she couldn't challenge pack authority. They thought they'd successfully bred the ability out of her line. They were wrong." The room spun around me. Luna Shadowborn. I'd heard that name whispered in the pack sometimes, always with a mixture of fear and disgust, always as a warning about what happened to females who tried to rise above their station. But I'd never known, my mother had never told me, that Luna Shadowborn was my own grandmother. "Why?" I demanded, anger finally breaking through the terror that had paralyzed me. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want from me?" Raven's expression softened slightly, and for the first time I saw something that might have been genuine sympathy in those ancient eyes. "Because you deserve to know the truth. Because you deserve to make an informed choice about your own fate instead of stumbling blindly into a future you don't understand. And because, Elena, I need you." "Need me?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "The Alpha King of the Northern Territories needs a terrified girl hiding in a cabin? That's rich." "I need," he said patiently, "a moon speaker who isn't bound to any pack, who hasn't been broken and bred into submission, who still has enough fire in her soul to fight for something better than the barbaric traditions that govern our kind." I need someone who can help me change the way packs operate, who can stand beside me as an equal rather than a subordinate, who can use her power to build instead of destroy. Equal. The word was so foreign, so impossible, that I almost couldn't process it. I'd never been anyone's equal. I'd always been property, something to be controlled and directed and used according to someone else's will. I'm offering you a choice, Raven continued. You can stay here and wait for your pack to find you, and they will find you, probably within the hour. They'll claim you by force, break your will, and spend the rest of your life using you to breed strong pups while your power slowly withers and dies unused. Or you can come with me. You can learn what you really are, learn to control your abilities, learn to use your voice to reshape the Lycan world into something better than this cycle of dominance and submission we've been trapped in for centuries. And what do you get out of it? I asked suspiciously. Why would you offer me this? What's in it for you? He smiled again, but this time there was sadness in it. Change, Elena. Real, lasting change. I've spent 200 years building my territory, gathering packs under my rule, trying to modernize our laws and our traditions. But there's only so much I can do through force and political maneuvering. A moon speaker, though, a moon speaker can speak with the authority of the moon itself, can make even the most stubborn alpha listen, can change hearts and minds in ways that violence never can. Together, we could actually make a difference. We could create a world where females like you have choices, have power, have value beyond their ability to bear children. It was everything I'd ever wanted, presented to me by a stranger who had just kicked in my door and terrified me half to death. It was too good to be true, too perfect, too much like a fairy tale to possibly be real. And if I say no? I asked. Raven's expression hardened. Then I leave you to your fate. I'm not in the business of forcing people to accept help they don't want. But know this, if you refuse me tonight, you won't get another chance. Your pack will claim you, break you, and I won't interfere. That's pack law, and even I have to respect certain boundaries. Before I could respond, before I could even process what he was offering me, a howl split the night, long, mournful, and far too close. Then another and another, until the forest around the cabin echoed with the hunting calls of at least a dozen Lycans converging on our position. Raven stood in one fluid motion, his entire demeanor shifting from philosophical to predatory in an instant. They're here, he said grimly. Your pack has found you, and they're not alone. I can smell at least 3 different pack signatures out there. Word is spread about what you are, Elena. Every alpha within 100 miles wants to claim you for themselves, wants to control a moon speaker before she can become a threat to their authority. Terror crashed over me in waves. 3 packs. God, 3 different packs hunting me like I was some kind of prize to be won and mounted on a wall. What do? I gasped, my earlier anger and defiance crumbling in the face of this new threat. You choose, Raven said simply. Right now. Come with me and learn to fight, or stay here and submit. But whatever you decide, do it fast, because in about 30 seconds that door is going to be full of males who will not be as patient or as reasonable as I've been. The howls grew closer, and I could hear branches snapping, could hear the heavy thud of paws hitting the ground as Lycans in their wolf forms raced toward the cabin. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might pass out, and my hands shook as I reached for the pendant at my throat. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Blood remembers, Elena. Blood always remembers. And in that moment, with the sounds of the hunt closing in and the Alpha King standing before me offering an impossible future, I felt something shift inside me. Something deep and primal and older than memory stirred in my chest, responding to the power in the pendant, responding to the blood moon that hung heavy and crimson in the sky outside. Power. Real, terrifying, intoxicating power flooded through my veins like liquid fire, and for the first time in my life, I understood what my grandmother had been trying to tell me. I wasn't weak. I wasn't property. I wasn't just another female waiting to be claimed and bred and forgotten. I was a moon speaker, and God help anyone who tried to take that from me. I choose. I started to say, but the words were cut off as the door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and three massive Lycans in partial shift, half human, half wolf, all teeth and claws and barely contained violence, burst into the cabin. The first one, a scarred brute with matted brown fur and eyes like chips of yellow ice, fixed his gaze on me and snarled. Mine. The moon speaker is mine by right of first claim. Like hell, growled the second, slightly smaller but moving with a predator's grace that spoke of countless successful hunts. Victor of the Western Pack claims her under blood moon law. Stand down or die, mongrel. The third didn't speak, just lowered his head and bared fangs that could tear through steel, preparing to fight for the prize they all believed I was. And Raven just stood there between them and me, utterly calm, utterly still, radiating a presence that made all three of the intruders hesitate despite their obvious aggression. Gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying that growling undertone that made every hair on my body stand on end, you're trespassing. This female is under my protection. Leave now, and I'll consider letting you live. Victor, I recognized the name now, recognized him as the alpha of the pack my mother had always said was too brutal even by Lycan standards, laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. Your protection? You have no authority here, Northerner. This is disputed territory, and the female is unclaimed. Blood Moon Law says she belongs to whoever can hold her. Blood Moon Law, Raven replied, his eyes beginning to glow with that inner fire I'd seen before, was written when Lycans were little more than animals fighting over scraps. I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and I say that law is outdated, barbaric, and about to change. Big words, Victor sneered, from a male who's about to be torn apart by 3 packs worth of warriors. Did you really think you could walk into our territory and steal our prize without consequences? The cabin was getting crowded now as more Lycans poured through the broken door, filling the small space with the overwhelming scent of aggression and violence. I pressed myself harder against the wall, trying to make myself invisible, trying to find any possible escape route in a room that suddenly felt like a cage. And then Victor's eyes locked onto mine, and I saw the raw hunger there, not just sexual, though that was certainly part of it, but the hunger for power, for control, for the ability to bend a moon speaker to his will and use her abilities to dominate every other pack in existence. Come here, little wolf, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of alpha authority that should have compelled immediate obedience. But instead of obeying, instead of feeling the familiar pull of submission that had governed my entire life, I felt my grandmother's power surge up inside me like a tidal wave. The pendant at my throat flared with heat so intense it should have burned, and words I didn't consciously choose poured from my lips in a voice that wasn't quite my own, older, deeper, resonating with the authority of centuries. You dare command a moon speaker? You dare try to claim what is not yours to take? I am Elena Shadowborn, daughter of Luna, granddaughter of the first speakers, and I will not submit to you or any male who treats me as property. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Every Lycan in the cabin, except for Raven, who was watching me with something that might have been pride, dropped to their knees as if struck by invisible force. Victor's eyes went wide with shock and terror as he struggled against the compulsion, muscles straining, veins standing out on his neck as he fought to resist my command. But he couldn't. None of them could. The power of the moon speaker, awakened by the blood moon and channeled through my grandmother's pendant, was absolute. Get out, I said, my voice still carrying that otherworldly resonance. Get out of this cabin, get out of these woods, and do not return. And spread the word to every pack within hearing. Elena Shadowborn is not to be claimed, not to be hunted, not to be treated as anything less than what she is, a force of nature you cannot control. They fled. Grown Lycans, some of whom had probably killed dozens of enemies in battle, scrambled over each other in their haste to escape my presence, whimpering like whipped dogs as they ran back into the forest. Within seconds, the cabin was empty except for Raven and me, the silence broken only by my ragged breathing and the hammering of my heart. And then, as quickly as it had come, the power drained away, leaving me weak and shaking, barely able to stand. I would have collapsed if Raven hadn't moved with impossible speed to catch me, his strong arms supporting my weight as my legs gave out completely. "Easy," he murmured, lowering me gently to the floor. "The first time is always the hardest. Your body isn't used to channeling that much power. It gets easier with practice." I gasped, unable to find words for what I'd just experienced. I didn't know, how did I? "Blood remembers," Raven said, and hearing my grandmother's words from his lips made tears spring to my eyes. "Your grandmother's gift awakened what was always inside you. But raw power without training is dangerous, Elena. You sent them running tonight, but you also showed every pack in 3 territories exactly what you are. Word will spread. Alphas will gather. Some will want to control you. Others will want to destroy you before you can become a threat. You've just painted a target on your back that will never fade." The implications of what I'd done crashed over me, and the tears that had been threatening spilled over. I just wanted them to leave me alone. I just wanted to be free. "I know," Raven said gently, and there was genuine compassion in his voice. "But freedom for someone like you, someone with your power, is never going to be simple. You can't hide anymore, Elena. You can't pretend to be just another pack female, hoping to avoid notice. You are what you are, and now everyone knows it." "So what do?" I asked, hating how small and frightened my voice sounded after the commanding power I'd wielded just moments before. Raven was quiet for a long moment, then said carefully, "You accept my offer. You come with me to the Northern Territories, where I can protect you while you learn to control your abilities. You train, you grow stronger, and you decide what kind of future you want to build with the power you've been given." Or what?" I interrupted. "Or you run," he said bluntly. "You run as far and as fast as you can, and you hope that somehow, despite all logic and probability, you manage to survive long enough to find a place where pack law doesn't reach. But I'll be honest with you, Elena, I don't think that place exists. The Lycan world is vast, and pack politics reach into every corner of it. A moonspeaker with no training and no protection won't last 6 months before someone claims her or kills her. It wasn't really a choice, and we both knew it. Running had gotten me this far, but running wasn't going to save me anymore. Not now that my power had awakened. Not now that every alpha with ambition knew exactly what I was and where to find me. "If I come with you," I said slowly, "if I accept your protection and your training, what exactly do you expect from me? What's the price of your help?" Raven met my eyes steadily. "Partnership. Not submission, not subservience, but genuine partnership. I want to change how packs operate, and I need a moonspeaker to help me do it. But I won't force you into anything you don't choose freely. When you're trained, when you're strong enough to defend yourself, you'll be free to make your own decisions about your future. If you want to stay and help me reshape the Lycan world, I'll welcome it. If you want to leave and find your own path, I'll let you go with my blessing." "And the claiming?" I asked because I had to know. "The blood moon ceremony, the forced mating, all of that." "Never," Raven said firmly. "Not until you choose it for yourself. You have my word, Elena, and I have never broken my word in 200 years of existence." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But trust had never come easily to me, and the wounds inflicted by a lifetime of being treated as property didn't heal in a single night, no matter how sincere he seemed. But what choice did I really have? Stay here alone and wait for the next wave of Lycans to come hunting? Try to make it on my own with power I couldn't control and enemies I couldn't fight? Or take the risk, accept help from this ancient king who claimed he wanted to change the world, and hope that for once in my life, someone was telling me the truth? The decision, when it came, felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability. "I'll come with you," I said, and felt the weight of those words settle over me like a cloak. "I'll train. I'll learn to control this power, and I'll help you change things. But know this, Raven, if you betray me, if you try to use me or control me or turn me into just another tool for your ambitions, I will use every ounce of this power to destroy you. Alpha King or not, you will not make me a victim." He smiled, and for the first time since he'd entered the cabin, It was a smile of genuine warmth rather than predatory amusement. I would expect nothing less from a moonspeaker. Come, then. We need to leave before Victor gathers his courage and returns with reinforcements. My territory is 3 days' travel north, and we'll need to move fast. He stood and offered me his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it, letting him pull me to my feet. My legs were still shaky, and I felt drained in a way that went beyond simple physical exhaustion, but I managed to stay upright. Wait, I said, pulling away from him to gather the few possessions I'd brought to the cabin, some clothes, a little food, and most importantly, my grandmother's journal that I'd hidden beneath the floorboards. It was the only thing I had left of her besides the pendant, and I wasn't leaving without it. Raven watched patiently as I collected my things, not rushing me, not commenting on the tears that kept spilling down my cheeks as I realized I was leaving behind everything I'd ever known. My pack, such as it was. My mother, who had never loved me, but who was still my mother. The territory where I'd been raised and where my grandmother had lived and died. Ready? Raven asked when I finally turned back to him, my small bundle of possessions clutched to my chest. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He led the way out of the cabin into the night, and I followed, stepping through the broken doorway into a world that looked completely different than it had just hours before. The blood moon still hung heavy in the sky, painting everything in shades of crimson and shadow, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I could feel its pull, could feel the power it offered singing in my blood, but it no longer controlled me. We moved through the forest quickly, Raven setting a pace that should have been impossible for someone as exhausted as I was, but somehow I kept up. The power that had awakened in me seemed to lend strength to my limbs, seemed to sharpen my senses and quicken my reflexes in ways I didn't fully understand. Behind us, I could hear howls in the distance, Victor and his allies regrouping, probably planning their next move. But Raven didn't seem concerned, just kept moving steadily north, deeper into territory I'd never explored, toward a future I couldn't begin to imagine. Tell me about the Northern Territories, I said after we'd been traveling for over an hour, partly to distract myself from my exhaustion and partly because I needed to know what I was walking into. Raven glanced back at me, his eyes glowing softly in the darkness. They're different from what you're used to. 17 packs united under one rule, with laws that prioritize cooperation over competition. Females have rights there. The right to choose their mates, the right to refuse claims, the right to hold territory and lead packs if they're strong enough. It's not perfect, Elena. There's still resistance, still males who cling to the old ways, still conflicts that sometimes turn violent. But it's better than the chaos and brutality that governs most of the Lycan world. And they'll accept me? I asked. A moon speaker from a foreign pack with power they don't understand? Some will welcome you, Raven admitted. Others will fear you. But all of them will respect you, because I'll make them. And as you grow stronger, as you learn to command your abilities, they'll come to see you as I do, as a force for necessary change rather than a threat to be eliminated. I wanted to feel reassured by his words, but all I could feel was a bone-deep weariness that went beyond the physical. I'd used power I didn't understand, made enemies I couldn't fight, and committed myself to a path I couldn't turn back from. And though Raven seemed sincere in his promises of partnership and protection, I knew from bitter experience that promises were easy to make and easier to break. We traveled through the night, putting as much distance as possible between ourselves and my old territory. As dawn began to break, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that washed away the crimson of the blood moon, Raven finally called a halt in a small clearing beside a stream. "We'll rest here for a few hours," he said, settling himself against a tree with the casual ease of someone who'd spent centuries sleeping rough. "You need to recover your strength, and we're far enough from Victor's territory that we should be safe for now." I collapsed onto the ground, too exhausted to even consider finding a more comfortable position. My entire body ached, my head pounded, and the pendant at my throat felt uncomfortably warm against my skin, as if it had absorbed too much power during the night's events. "What happens now?" I asked, staring up at the lightning sky. "What's the next step in this partnership of ours?" Raven was quiet for a moment, then said, "Now you learn what it means to be a moon speaker. You learn to control your power instead of letting it control you. You learn the history of your bloodline, the responsibilities that come with your abilities, and the price that will be demanded of you if you choose to use them to change the world." "And if I decide the price is too high?" I asked. "If I learn all of this and decide I don't want the responsibility? Then I'll help you find a way to seal your power," Raven said simply. "It can be done. Your grandmother considered it more than once. But know that sealing a moon speaker's abilities doesn't make you normal, Elena. It just makes you vulnerable. Without your power, you're just another female in a world that treats females as property. With it, you have a chance to be something more." I closed my eyes, feeling tears leak from beneath my eyelids once again. I'd cried more in the past 24 hours than I had in the previous 10 years combined, and I was so tired of being afraid, of being angry, of carrying the weight of expectations and traditions I'd never asked for. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," I whispered. "I don't know if I can be what you need me to be." Raven's hand touched my shoulder gently, and when I opened my eyes, he was looking at me with an expression of such understanding that it made my chest ache. "Strength isn't about never being afraid or never doubting yourself, Elena. It's about moving forward despite the fear, about making the choice to try even when you're not sure you'll succeed. You've already shown more strength than most Lycans display in a lifetime. You ran when running meant defying your entire pack. You awakened your power when it would have been easier to submit. And you made the choice to fight for a better future instead of accepting the one you were given. That's not weakness. That's the kind of courage that changes worlds." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel the conviction and certainty he seemed to possess in such abundance. But all I could feel was exhaustion and fear and a grief for the life I'd never gotten to live, the choices I'd never gotten to make before circumstances and bloodline and ancient power decided my path for me. But as the sun rose higher and the sounds of the waking forest surrounded us, I made myself a promise. I would learn. I would train. I would become strong enough to protect myself and to choose my own fate, whatever that fate might be. And if Raven proved to be a liar, if his promises of partnership turned out to be just another form of control, I would use every ounce of the power my grandmother had gifted me to break free, no matter the cost. I was Elena Shadowborn, daughter of Luna, granddaughter of the first speakers. I was a moon speaker, feared and hunted, and desperately needed by a world that didn't know how badly it needed to change. And I was done being afraid. The journey north continued for 3 more days, each one bringing us deeper into territory I'd never imagined existed. The forests here were older, wilder, with trees that must have been growing since before the first Lycans walked upright. The streams ran clearer, the air tasted cleaner, and the sense of pack presence grew stronger with every mile we traveled. I learned things during those days. Learned that Raven could move with impossible speed when necessary, that his senses were sharper than any Lycan I'd ever encountered, that his knowledge of the land and its hidden paths suggested centuries of travel. I learned that he was patient with my exhaustion, never pushing me beyond what I could handle, always finding us safe places to rest when my strength gave out. And I learned that despite his power and his authority, he seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the traditional dynamics of dominance and submission that governed most Lycan interactions. "I've had 200 years to watch how pack law destroys potential," he told me one evening as we sat by our campfire. 200 years of seeing talented, intelligent females reduced to breeding stock because they didn't have the physical strength to challenge the males who claimed them. 200 years of watching packs tear themselves apart fighting over territory and status instead of working together for common good. It's wasteful, Elena. It's barbaric. And it has to change. "But you're still an alpha," I pointed out. "You still hold power over those 17 packs you mentioned. How is that different from the traditional pack structure?" "Because I rule through demonstrated competence and earned respect, not through fear and violence," Raven replied. "My packs follow me because I've proven I can protect them, provide for them, and lead them to prosperity. If they chose to reject my authority tomorrow, I wouldn't force them to submit. I'd either earn back their trust or I'd step aside and let someone better take my place." It was such a radical concept that I almost couldn't process it. Alphas didn't step aside. Alphas ruled until they were killed or until age made them weak enough to challenge. The idea of an alpha voluntarily relinquishing power was almost unthinkable. Has that ever happened? I asked. Has one of your packs ever rejected your authority? Raven smiled slightly. Once. About 80 years ago, a pack in the Western Reaches decided they'd rather govern themselves. I let them go, helped them establish their territory boundaries, and made it clear they were welcome to return if things didn't work out. They lasted 3 years before they asked to rejoin. Turns out independence sounds better than it actually is when you're surrounded by hostile neighbors and struggling to maintain your hunting grounds. We reached the borders of the Northern Territories on the 4th day, and the change was immediately apparent. Guards, Lycans in partial shift, armed and alert, challenged us as we approached, but they immediately backed down when they recognized Raven, showing a level of discipline and organization I'd never seen in my old pack. "My king," one of them said, dropping to one knee. "We weren't expecting you back so soon. And you've brought—" He trailed off, his eyes widening as he took in my scent, my pendant, the power that I could feel radiating from me even in my exhausted state. "I've brought Elena Shadowborn," Raven said calmly. "She's under my protection and is to be treated with the same respect you would show me. Make sure word spreads through all the packs. Anyone who threatens her answers to me personally." The guard's eyes went even wider, but he nodded quickly. "Of course, my king. Should I send word ahead to prepare quarters?" "Not necessary," Raven said. "We'll proceed directly to the main compound. But have the council assembled. We have much to discuss." As we passed through the border and into Raven's territory proper, I was struck by how different everything felt. The packs we passed, small clusters of homes and communal buildings scattered through the forest, seemed prosperous and peaceful. Females moved freely, without the constant watchful presence of dominant males. Children played, without the fear I remembered from my own childhood. It was like stepping into a different world entirely. "This is what you've built," I said, not quite able to keep the awe from my voice. "This is what we've built together," Raven corrected. "Every pack here has contributed, every alpha has worked to make this vision a reality. It's imperfect, and there are still conflicts, still those who resist change. But it's better than what came before. And with your help, it can be better still." The main compound turned out to be a massive log structure built into the side of a mountain, with multiple levels and wings sprawling out in every direction. It was easily large enough to house hundreds of Lycans, and from the scents and sounds emanating from it, I suspected it came close to capacity. We entered through massive double doors into a central hall that took my breath away. High ceilings supported by ancient timber beams, walls decorated with carvings that told stories I didn't recognize, a great hearth in the center that could probably roast an entire elk. And Lycans, dozens of them, all stopping their conversations and activities to stare as Raven and I walked through. I felt their eyes on me, felt them evaluating, judging, trying to determine what I was and whether I represented a threat or an opportunity. My hand went instinctively to my grandmother's pendant, and I felt its warmth pulse in response, as if assuring me I had power even here, even surrounded by so many potential enemies. Raven led me through the hall and into a smaller chamber where a group of older Lycans, the council, presumably, were already gathering. They looked at me with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern to outright hostility, and I straightened my spine, refusing to show the fear that threatened to overwhelm me. "Council members," Raven said formally, "I present Elena Shadowborn, Moon Speaker and heir to the Luna bloodline. She's accepted my offer of protection and training, and she'll be staying in the Northern Territories for the foreseeable future." An older female with silver-streaked hair and sharp green eyes leaned forward. "A Moon Speaker? We haven't seen one in half a century. How do we know this claim is legitimate?" Before Raven could answer, I felt that surge of power again, that connection to something ancient and vast that my grandmother's pendant seemed to channel. I met the female's eyes directly and spoke, letting just a hint of the commanding voice bleed through. Would you like a demonstration, counselor? I could command every Lycan in this compound to kneel, if that would satisfy your doubts about my legitimacy. The room went utterly silent, and I saw several of the council members go pale. The female who'd questioned me looked shocked, then thoughtful, then slowly nodded. That won't be necessary, she said quietly. I can feel the power in your words, child. You are what you claim to be. The question is, what do you intend to do with that power? And there it was, the question I'd been asking myself for days now, the question I still didn't have a complete answer for. I intend, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully, to learn to control it, to understand it, and then to use it to make sure no other female has to spend her life running and hiding and terrified of being claimed as property. Beyond that, I honestly don't know yet, but I'm willing to work with King Raven and this council to figure it out. There was a long pause, and then the silver-haired female smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her stern features. Well spoken, child. I am Moira, first council member and Raven's oldest advisor. Welcome to the Northern Territories. We have much to teach you, and I suspect you have much to teach us as well. The rest of the council introduced themselves, and while I could sense that some were more welcoming than others, none showed the overt hostility or dismissiveness I'd experienced my entire life in my old pack. It was disorienting, this lack of immediate threat, and I found myself constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that shoe never fell. Instead, I found myself immersed in a world of learning and discovery that I'd never imagined possible. Moira took me under her wing, teaching me the history of the Moonspeakers, the extent and limitations of my abilities, the price that using such power could extract. Raven trained with me, helping me build the physical strength and combat skills I'd need to defend myself when words and power weren't enough. And gradually, painfully, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd found a place where I could be more than just a victim waiting to happen. But even as I grew stronger, even as I learned to control my abilities and embrace my identity as a Moonspeaker, I never forgot the anger and pain that had driven me to that cabin in the woods. I never forgot the terror of being hunted, the helplessness of having no control over my own fate. And I never forgot the faces of all the other females I'd left behind in my old territory, still trapped in the cycle of claiming and submission that had almost destroyed me. This is my story. The story of how I went from a terrified girl hiding in a cabin to a Moonspeaker standing beside an Alpha King, working to reshape the Lycan world into something better than the nightmare I'd escaped. It's a story of pain and anger, yes, but also of hope and determination and the stubborn refusal to accept that the world has to stay broken just because it's always been that way. And it's just beginning, because the blood moon will rise again, and when it does, I'll be ready. Not as prey, not as property, but as what I truly am, a force of nature that the old order never saw coming, and that the new order desperately needs. My name is Elena Shadowborn, and this is how I stopped running and started fighting back. Elena's journey is just beginning, and the choice she makes will shape the future of the Lycan world. Will she embrace her destiny as a Moonspeaker, or continue to fight for her freedom? The blood moon has set the stage for a battle of wills, but what will happen next? What choice would you make? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of Elena's epic journey. Join us as we explore the untold truths of the Lycan world and the power that lies within the heart of the unclaimed.